In this unit, we're going to be exploring linear functions, and so we will be graphing lines, finding the slopes of lines, writing equations of lines. And before we can get into all of that information, I want to do a quick review of the coordinate plane and some of its different features. So here is the coordinate plane, and the first feature that we need to discuss are the axes. So we have the x-axis and we have the y-axis. The x-axis is located here, and that represents all of the horizontal movement on our graph. 0 is in the center, all of the positive values are to the right, and the negative values are to the left. So the x-axis represents all of the horizontal movement on our graph. The y-axis is located here, and as you can see, the y-axis represents all of the vertical movement on our graph. So again, 0 is here. Positive movement on the y-axis indicates movement up. Negative movement is indicating movement down. Another important feature on the coordinate plane that we need to remember is called the origin. And the origin is located at 0 on the x-axis and 0 on the y-axis. So the origin is located right here in the center. And that's going to be extremely important when we practice plotting points on the next page. The final feature of the coordinate plane that we need to review are the quadrants. And the quadrants are the 4 different parts of the graph. 1, 2, 3, 4. X-axis is here, y-axis is here. So that breaks the graph up into 4 different sections. And those sections have special names. This is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, and this is quadrant 4. And so it's important that when we're plotting points or visualizing points, we're able to identify what quadrant they lie in. So if a point is plotted anywhere in this region, it's in quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. So the final activity in our review of the coordinate plane consists of plotting points. And so you'll see here that the directions ask us to plot the following points and identify the quadrant. Okay, so we have this list of points. We're going to first plot them on the graph, and then we'll talk about what quadrant each point falls in. Okay, so the first point, point A, is 3, 5. And what we need to remember is that anytime we're given a point, or another name for it is an ordered pair, the first number in the parentheses is telling us how we should be moving on the x-axis. So remember, x is horizontal. So the first number is the horizontal movement. The second number tells us how we should be moving on the y-axis, which, if you remember, is the vertical movement. So the second number is going to be telling me how I should move up and down. What you need to remember is that for every point, we should always begin at the origin. So point A is 3, 5. The 3 tells me that I should move 3 to the right. So here's 0, 1, 2, 3. And then up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so I'm going to plot my point right there. The other important thing that they ask us to do based on these letters is to label the points. So we just plotted point A. We want to write a little A next to it, because after we get all of these points plotted on the graph, if we don't label them, sometimes it's hard to remember or hard to tell the difference among them. So point number 2, point B, is 7, negative 3. So we start on 0. 7 means 7 to the right because it's positive, so we move over to 7. And then negative 3 is the vertical movement. Negative 3 is the y value, so 1, 2, 3 down. So my second point, point B, will be located right here. Okay, and again, I want to remember to label. Point C, we'll start moving a little more quickly. Point C is negative 6, 0. So negative 6 is on the x-axis. 0 is telling me movement on the y-axis. So I start at the origin always, and I move 6 to the left. Now the 0 for the y value indicates that I'm not going to move up or down at all. I'm going to stay right there. So point C is going to actually be located right here on the x-axis. So again, we remember to label always. The fourth point is point D, negative 3, 1. So negative 3 means 1, 2, 3 to the left, and positive 1 is up 1. So point D will be right here. The next point is point E, located at 0, 0, and if you remember from the previous page, 0, 0 is the origin. So this point is located right in the middle, right on the origin. Point F is negative 7, negative 8. So the negative 7 tells me I go 7 to the left. Negative 8 tells me I go down 8. So point F will be located here. And the final point is point G, 0, 8. So remember, 0 is telling me how should I move on the x-axis. So what that means is I'm not moving to the right, I'm not moving to the left at all. I'm staying right on the origin in terms of horizontal movement. The positive 8 is y movement. That tells me I need to go up 8. So this final point is going to be located right here. That's point G. So again, we remember to label. And it's located on the y-axis. Okay, so we have all of these points plotted on our graph. The other thing that they're asking us to do is identify what quadrant these points are in. Okay, so if we remember, the graph is broken up into 4 quadrants, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're labeled with Roman numerals. And so if we look at point A, we've already plotted it and we've labeled them, so they're easy to find. Here's point A, so point A is in quadrant 1. If we take a look, point B is here, point B is in quadrant 4. Now point C we have to talk about a little bit. Point C is right here. It's actually in between quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. It's not in either one. It's on this line that separates them, the x-axis. So it's not located in quadrant 2 or quadrant 3. What we're going to say here is that it's on the x-axis. Okay. Point D is located right here. That's in quadrant 2. Point E is located here. That's similar to what we discussed with point C. It's not in any of these 4 quadrants. It's on the x-axis and it's on the y-axis. It's actually located right at the origin. So it's not in any of the 4 quadrants. It's on the origin, and so we should write origin. Point F, if we take a look, is in quadrant 3. And the last point, point G, is in between quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. It's actually on the y-axis, so we're going to write y-axis. Okay, so remember, anytime that you're asked to plot points, you need to remember that the first value tells us how to move left and right, the second value tells us how to move up and down, and we should always begin on the origin. And if you're given letters to label your points, you need to make sure that after you plot the point, you write the letter next to it so that you can tell the difference when you're finished plotting the set of points.